Hi, I'm Metta Spencer. I'm in Toronto, and I'm going to have a wonderful afternoon with friends all over the world. And the purpose of our meeting, this is a town hall meeting, and the whole idea is that today, we always have a monthly town meeting, but this time I hope we'll focus on some of the consequences of the pandemic, because some of the political and social consequences of the pandemic. Because what I'm sensing, and I doubt that anybody's going to disagree with me, they might. I'm sensing that because of the epidemic, there's a tendency for more nationalism and more, well, after all, the walls in effect are between nations now. They're really there. You can't travel across borders, which might as well be a wall. And so we're having more a return to national identity and national local concerns, as opposed to the kind of globalization that I think most of us would actually prefer. I had a good conversation with Robert Douglas maybe a couple of months ago. Robert Douglas is a physician and epidemiologist in Australia, and he and some of his colleagues and friends have formed a commission for something like the human future. I don't remember the name, Robert, but you'll tell us in a moment, because I'd like for you to take a few minutes, if you will, and share with us a little bit about what you are doing and what your aspirations are for this new organization, because it has big ideas. It's not just a peace group, just as Project Save the World is not just a peace group, but we certainly are. We start with a peace group. And we're concerned about some of the other issues, such as pandemics or other things that might happen by way of disasters that we should be thinking about and trying to prevent.
Thanks, Metta. Well, look, this was an organisation that was formed about 6 months ago by a group of concerned citizens and researchers, predominantly based in Canberra at the Australian National University, but with links around Australia and indeed some links around the world. It's called the Commission for the Human Future. You can read about it on humanfuture.net. It's built around the concern for 10 existential threats to the future of the human population, including especially food insecurity, climate change, the risk of nuclear war, the depletion of human resources, of environmental resources, the growing poisoning of the planet, the uncontrolled proliferation of technology, and so on. It's really was stimulated by the work of Julian Cribb, who wrote a book about 2 years ago on surviving the 21st century. So we are on about how we can bring together effective strategies for avoiding these 10 interconnecting existential and catastrophic threats. Mm-hmm. We've held 2 very effective round tables, one entitled Surviving and Thriving in the 21st Century, and the second one on food as the centre of the human future. And we've got one coming up shortly on the risk of climate change and why we've got to get on with it. I think that's all I need to say, Metta. People can read about it, that we have made a call to all people and governments around the world to take this threat of the future seriously. And we certainly encourage you to have a look at our website and read some of the things we're talking about. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think what we're thinking of, that I want to suggest that I'd like to put up a little thing on our website encouraging people to go and have a look at what you're doing.
What is the website?
Yeah.
It's called humanfuture.net.
Okay. Here is Paul Werbos, and you're in Virginia or Washington, D.C., aren't you, Paul?
Yes.
Good. Hi.
Really happy to hear what Robert Douglas just said. I am deeply concerned about the exact same sort of existential threats. My list would be slightly different, but they overlap a lot. There is a group called the Millennium Project, which I hope some of you have heard of, www.themp.org, which used to be sponsored by the United Nations University. It still has nodes in 65 countries. It is rated as the world's #1 futurist organization. Every year they have evaluations of that kind of stuff. But frankly, there are still problems. There is a huge gap in what's going on. They have a World Futures Day every year. And in the last one, people from all of the nodes, from the European Union, Australia, all over the world, we're saying we haven't had enough real dialogue. We submit paper together, and the web is becoming less and less useful as a place to communicate. We really need to set up Zoom conversations. And it hasn't really happened yet. But one of the topics we've started to talk about internationally is the climate change topic. I would say internet, the noosphere are two others that we've talked about a lot. But in terms of climate change, I am so happy to hear from Robert, because we really need new connections and communications in this climate space. I have been deeply upset about the gap between what we need to do to prevent extinction, in worst case climate change, and what we can do in terms of policy. And every time we get close to these nodes and these governments, almost every government in the world is surrounded by a cadre of professional lobbyists, is no other way to put it. People who are very ambitious about how to make money off of climate change. And people would say, oh, the real problem is capitalism. The real problem is people eating meat. The real problem is, I said, let's talk about the actual numbers and what we can do. But people are so deeply committed to their ideological concerns, it's hard to get legislation which is cost effective. And we do have people who know how to do that. There's a network in Brazil which has really very effective, cost-effective strategies for really improving the climate picture without having to spend trillions of dollars to do it.
Notion of climate refugees and climate-related migration. Do you hear a lot of conversation in Australia about the small island states in the Pacific and the role that climate change will have on them, and the role that Australia can have, and the same with New Zealand in kind of supporting those populations? A lot of those islands are only 6 feet above sea level. They're under immense risk of losing freshwater resources. They're under immense risk of losing massive amounts of territory from climate change and livelihoods. We very rarely hear about them here in Canada. There was a proposal a few years ago, I think, to move the people of Kiribati to either Fiji as well as some other regions, but I haven't heard much about that since.
I have an answer to it, and it's not a satisfactory one.
Oh.
Yes, there is deep concern in those Pacific Islands, and especially in Kiribati, about the rising sea level and the fact that they will be climate refugees at the rate we're going very, very soon. Our own government was deeply damaged by the appearance of our Prime Minister at a meeting of the Pacific countries about 6 months ago, showing virtually no interest in this. Our own government has done quite well on COVID-19, but is doing very, very poorly for one of the richest and most renewable energy capable countries in the world. This is one of the issues we're tackling in the Commission in the coming few weeks. We are attempting to build the pressure for very urgent action on climate change.
One of the questions that arises for me about this is how much can be done at the global level. For example, the UN High Commission on Refugees, no doubt has a lot of work to do in just taking care of people immediately when they are fleeing and so on, or living in tents and so on. But in terms of really organizing a rational mode of distribution of refugees to various countries, it would seem to me to be a really good thing to have a strong international body that could coordinate efforts to move people when they need to be moved, and ask distribute them rationally. But is it the case that all of the decisions are really made by individual countries who decide on their own how many refugees they will accept in a particular year? Or are most of the countries, of course, almost all countries belong to the UN, but by belonging to the UN, is there any real sense of sharing sovereignty, in the sense of having incurring obligations to pay attention to the recommendations of this coordinating agency, so to speak? And the refugees organization is only one of them. There should be, of course, there are many other organizations at the international level that are supposed to be handling global problems, but I think more and more are really not able to accomplish as much because the nations are doing it themselves one by one.
COVID-19 has not ushered in a new post-national era. I don't see a sense of shared sovereignty. On the contrary, when I think of India, Pakistan, Kashmir, I think nationalist agendas are being reinforced in this day and age. And COVID has exacerbated the politicization of identity in the form of fundamentalism, xenophobia. We are witnessing outbursts of entrenched nationalisms, as well as movements that are aimed at recuperating mythical national identities as a way to eliminate the alien other. So the growth of ethno-nationalism that we are seeing the world over has led to the criminalization of immigrants. And here I'm thinking specifically of Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar and Indonesia, and I'm thinking of Kashmiris in India, you see? And in the midst of the unwieldy fear caused by this pandemic, bigotry continues to run rapid. And there are governmental agencies in South Asia, in the United States as well. There are vigilante groups that conflate COVID-19 with a particular religious community or racial group. So as you all know, currently the government of India is run by an ultra right-wing nationalist political party. And that party has criminalized the Muslim community for a long time. And they have been in very facile and cunning ways as well, conflating this pandemic with the Muslim community. So instead of emphasizing preparation, vaccines, and education in an attempt to prevent the spread of this pandemic, right-wing governments are brazenly deploying this disease to vilify entire communities.
I think you're right. And in other words, it's even worse than I said.
Question for Paul. You point out that capitalism is, everybody wants to try and profit off the climate change in one way or another. But what is the alternative? Does one not really need to somehow embrace this kind of entrepreneurship that capitalism offers in addressing climate change?
There is a Canadian IT group which is interested in using advanced IT technology to help with climate. And even though that sounds like a vested interest, these guys are actually studying how to make things work efficiently. And there's a group in Toronto, which is the base of it. So it may seem strange to think of Toronto computer people as the best hope for the human species, but that's kind of how I think about it right now.
Here, give us a real short summary of what it is you think we should know.
Okay, so for each of these sectors, electricity generation, transportation, and agriculture, we could have huge impacts at low cost if we take advantage of what we know of those sectors. Of course, how do I discuss 3 sectors in 5 minutes? I do have a YouTube video. If you just go to YouTube, Werbo's Climate, I go into some detail on those sectors. I used to run electric power research for the National Science Foundation. It turns out we don't need these expensive incentive systems some people are calling for. All we need to do is change the law so that people are allowed to carry solar electricity across interstate lines in a way that you can do with gas pipelines. It's different laws. In agriculture, there are things that people can do with better livestock practices and soil management, which would drastically improve the carbon picture while actually improving agricultural productivity. So the bottom line is there are technical things we can do in these sectors that would dramatically reduce carbon dioxide, which we should have been doing anyway. And the problem is the truth has to get past the vested interests. And there are a lot of reasons why they have laws saying you're allowed to ship natural gas, but not electricity. But that's not a free market. And a fair free market would have dramatic value for renewable electricity. We need that much more than we need these other cockamamie things I've heard of. So I have a list of things we can do.
All right. Well, I tell you what, you send it to me and I'll find a way to distribute it. Somehow we'll put it on our website. And by the way, our website is available for people who have ideas that you want to post and share. And so you want to do something, you want to go to a website called tosavetheworld.ca, and you'll find there are many comments columns where you can suggest ideas. And we're going to put in a suggestion box right on the front page.
Just to add to Paul's comments, are 3 sectors. Another sector which I think the Green New Deal really does not deal with is the military. And when we look at paying for the Green New Deal and looking for climate and all these sort of things, the money's got to come from somewhere. And I would advise that the money come from the military. The Pentagon contributes more to greenhouse gases than the whole country of Sweden. And so therefore, by decreasing the military, defunding the military, that is a very quick and easy way that we could decrease greenhouse gases. And I think the problem here in Canada is that we're building naval ships. We're looking to buy the F-35 fighter jets, which we simply don't need. I mean, what is our threat? Our existential threat is the things that you, Metta, talk about, climate change, pandemics, nuclear war weapons, radiation, famine, and cyber attacks. So the military does not solve any of those global problems, and therefore we should be getting out of NATO and getting and decreasing our role in the military and strengthening our role. If you want the military, well then put blue helmets on them with the UN.
Dwyer Sullivan speaking, representative of Conscious Canada, and it's been very noticeable that noted that the Secretary General of the United Nations has asked the world to cease war during this pandemic. And it makes so much sense And for all the reasons you just mentioned, I was protesting yesterday against those 19 billion for useless jets. But the military budget is what's hurting us worldwide, as you know. And so it was great to hear the Secretary General of the United Nations pushing for the same: cease war.
I would like to ask Robert, we haven't heard from him for a while, what exactly he means about his list of concerns when he talks about the uncontrolled proliferation of technology. Does he look at social media as a component in this problem as well?
Look, we haven't really begun work on the uncontrolled technology. We had a brief discussion in our first round table, and I would draw your attention to the website and to the report on surviving and thriving, where we in fact started to try and outline the range of concerns we had. We believe that these concerns are interconnected, that if our kids are to have a future, we do have to bring together the responses to all of these 10 areas that have been very clearly articulated in his book by Julian Cribb, Surviving the 21st Century. So I would refer you very firmly to that book, but also to the initial discussion our commission had with about 40 people on a Zoom in March that in fact outlined the domains. We have spent a lot of time and effort on food. Food security we see as a serious problem facing the whole world, because I don't think we've spent enough time talking about our response to the uncontrolled technologies, which we believe are multiple. Social media is maybe a small part. The artificial intelligence is one that really bothers us, and we believe there does need to be a global effort.
Maybe we should spend a little bit of time thinking about what the issue that Rose and Robert have just been addressing, because I think it is something that is potentially of very great significance. And it's not just, I mean, Rose focuses on the negative effects of video games and that sort of thing, but and that's included, but it's a much bigger project. I was just speaking with a friend in Russia who was talking about the fact that they are now using facial identification technology. They have cameras all over the streets. They know when you take a taxi where you went. They know how much you drink. They know what massage parlors you go to. They, you name it. They know the whole works, everything about you. And it's not just Facebook collecting this information, but there's some really horrible potential for, and the system they're putting in, they themselves are calling it Orwell. They call their system Orwell because they're not even ashamed of the potential that they're walking right into, creating a situation where the whole population can be monitored and controlled. Now, this kind of threat, it seems to me, is something that we need to start thinking about and organizing against. On the other side is the fact that we're doing right now something I consider quite a wonderful thing. The potential of being able to have a global conversation from Zoom with Zoom is a terrific blessing. And I really thank the people who invented this. And their downsides. So let's give some thought to what are the risks involved in using the technologies that are available for communication. Social media has become extremely valuable for organizing things like protests. That's how they organized the Arab Spring. But the problem with it is you can't easily build a continuing government that way. Once you got people together and you've done your demonstration, it's not easy to maintain an organization with Zoom. Or they didn't have Zoom in Cairo, but with social media. So there are limitations and there are dangers and there are blessings.
how much regulation is possible or desirable. It seems to me that in the last couple of years, particularly with growing concerns about the security that the internet has kindled and the polarization social media creates, quite in addition to the various forms of violent entertainment that have concerned me, as you know, for many years, the dream or utopian notion that how we could have net neutrality is beginning to fade.
Can somebody explain what net neutrality is before we ask for comments?
Okay, well, my impression of what it is means that there would be a level playing field for everyone who needed or wanted access to the internet. In other words, no two-tiered system of charges or high speed or reduced speed. Everyone would have the same unfettered access to the internet. Now, the problem I have with that is that teenagers and the underprivileged and people and outliers, everybody has the same access as the sexual predators. I mean, there's been some evidence to suggest that with the onset of COVID, the incidence of sexual predators tracking children has gone up 81%. I mean, it was a crisis before COVID. Now it's worse. I mean, what kind of restrictions, if any, should be put on internet access?
Mm-hmm.
Seems to me that other industries and medical professions, that, you know, charter accounting, everyone has guidelines as to what you can and can't do, what's accepted, and even internationally. So, you know, why is technology slow on the uptake? We need to, you know, we need to really press for that as our rights are being stripped, as Metta says, you know, the technology for recognition, even through masks. There isn't much security for our conversations on Zoom or anywhere else. As soon as we go out to a protest now, it's easier for them. So looking in terms of our right to protest even, and our right to oppose, and right to, you know, to challenge, we need to have these securities. And, you know, human security, common security should include digital rights.
That's an interesting point. Is, for example, access to Facebook a right? Is that a digital human right? Is there such thing?
But is it a right for Facebook to use our, you know, engagement with it for the ways that they have been, for the sale, you know, of our information, for, you know, so where can we take those powers back?
Mm-hmm.
I think the UN a few years ago was exploring the right to internet access, or the right to broadband, or the freedom to connect. Does anyone know any updates regarding that?
And I also would like to underscore Richard's comment with respect to the Great Green Deal, and that it actually, the whole aspect of military and militarism and the expanding military is actually absent from that document. And so in the Canadian Voice of Women for Peace, that's one of the issues that we were raising prior. How do we sign on, or do we not sign on? Robert in the Human Futures, he spoke about, and I'll just mention about food security or insecurity as we are seeing now. And I think insofar as an idea of, and I really, my work pertains to work at the grassroots level. And having seen how COVID has actually had a huge and profound effect on the racialized population, the low-income earners, and so on, bringing these inequalities to our attention. So at the local level, I think it's really important to bring neighborhoods together. In some instances, you've got neighborhoods where people are living in high density neighborhoods. There's no yards, no balconies. However, there could be community gardens. And so you can have participation across all sectors. I know in our community, well, right this week in Nelson, the community food distribution bank was very proud to present how outside of the United Church, space was built for growing food, and that they harvested, this was just one season, they harvested a huge amount of food that they were then garden food, giving out to folks who were accessing the food bank. And I know we've shifted from now speaking about technology, and I should just mention, Metta, you spoke about having learned how Russia right now is, or has already prepared or is engaging in that surveillance activity. To be quite honest and frank with you, I feel that that surveillance we have already been experiencing here in Canada, and I'm not sure, and most likely in the United States.
What limitations do you find with grassroots organizing and on the small scale when it comes to using the internet as a tool?
Well, you know what, Adam, that these three, what is it now, 4 or 5 months that places have been shut down, and one that has been very much what I've been hearing is the closure of the libraries, because not everybody has the opportunity to even have the technology in the home. Now, when I mentioned about COVID having impact on marginalized populations, and I've seen letters to the editor saying, open up the library.
What parts of this technology do we find acceptable, and what do we find unacceptable? You know, I feel personally, if I'm out in a public place and there are cameras, I don't object to that. I'm in public, and if I didn't want to be in public, I should stay home. But in public, if they want to take a picture of me, I don't care. If they want to hear what I'm saying, if they can pick up my sound as I walk along talking to a friend, that bothers me a little. I don't think I would like that. I think that would be too intrusive. Certainly, if they put a camera in my house, I would definitely not like that. And I suppose in the bathroom in particular, you just, there are levels of privacy that you insist upon. And I have a very, very public kind of way of being. I don't mind being in public at all, but there are places, where you don't want people in your kitchen, and if you got dirty dishes stacked up, well, that's my business, kind of thing. Okay, so there's a question of secrecy or privacy in the use of this technology, but the thing that really would get me is this facial recognition technology, because if they have facial recognition, and they can put it all together, and they get little bits and pieces of, well, she took a taxi from this place to that place, but so what, but if they can follow you everywhere and see you where they weren't expecting to see you, and have a record of where all you've been and so on like that, that is really the opportunity for a totalitarian regime, the likes of which humankind has never known before. I know there have been totalitarian societies in which they put, microphones in people's beds, and they had their neighbors spying on each other. Everybody had to spy on the other. So we got to watch out for that. But where's the line that we draw? I think if you come on my show here, on this talk show, you should expect to be, you're in public. Yeah.
I also, I have a level of comfortability with things, to the point of, even crossing borders in terms of my computers, and okay, so my daughter and I are filmmakers, and so just by the very nature of our work, we have this extra layer of caution that we want to take with our information wherever.
Why?
Because of regimes like the US, who are, the Homeland Security wanting to have the footage of any journalists that have been to protests. It's not, journalists have to protect their sources of information, and they're, so that that is an intrusion. Your phone, apparently, they can switch on your microphone, your camera. If I'm buying a cell phone, I don't want the manufacturer or the provider to allow that to happen, right? So there are things that we can do as consumers of technology to protect us, but ultimately we need to have the guidelines in place so that we don't have to be on that sort of line.
We could, we could do a survey of where is the limit for you? What is it you would find okay? And then we could create a document, a statement of here's what our lines are. Don't do this. And here's how much agreement we have that this is an offensive thing and we expect the government to outlaw it.
Just finished going through the list of videos that Metta has done over the years, and it's extraordinary. I think those are all issues, and we've only touched on a few of them today, but great work there, and I hope to be working with you in future about that. Going back to Metta's original question about what has the COVID crisis revealed, I think one of the things it's revealed is the very best and the very worst things of our society. It's a real X-ray. And what I'm going to suggest as a question is, can we gather information about the self-organization by poor people, minorities, etc.? There's been some very exciting stuff going on. And it doesn't all have to be top down. Thank you.
You want to elaborate a little on this?
I'll just give you one tiny example. The Devoir, which is a Montreal paper, had a weekend issue of about 4 pages on the Sem Terra, the homeless, landless in Brazil, and how those people organized in the favelas, in the slums, when the government was doing absolutely nothing to protect their health, their livelihoods, etc. That's just one example. There are things going on in India, there are things going on in Eastern Europe, there are things going on in Western Europe. I'm sure we all know one or two of those things. I'm wondering if we could put them together.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know how, but I'd love to work with you on that. Sure. Barbara.
During COVID was online consultations in medicine. Mm-hmm. And, there's confidential information being transmitted here in your files in the office. You're very careful about that. I'm not aware that there have been breaches of confidentiality online, but I could see that it could happen.
If you were practicing, would you be worried about the new technologies for sharing patients' medical records online? Does this concern you, or it sounds to me like it's something should have happened 50 years ago?
It's been, I think people feel it's been a very useful tool, but the only thing that was going on when I was still practicing was that people would occasionally send pictures of abnormal moles and that kind of stuff.
There's always encryption of video conferencing and that sort of thing, but any type of transmission of information has that potential that a hacker could get into it. I know colleagues of mine are sending information just over their cell phone. They'll take a picture of an ECG or whatever and send that to somebody else. So that type of information is definitely not being encrypted and could.
How worrisome is that? How much do you think people could actually or really are being harmed by that kind of thing?
Well, I would say that, an ECG may be fairly a benign example, but psychiatry now is certainly doing video interviews with patients, and I would hope that that is encrypted. But as I said, even that could be hacked.
How much privacy do we really need? I mean, I have, you know, if I had my medical record here, I would share it with any one of you. It would be boring, but you could, I don't mind, because I'm not afraid that you would do anything to me. I can hardly imagine anything bad that would happen if somebody found anything in my medical history. So,
Well,
am I being stupid, or is this really, are you guys stupid? Because almost everybody seems worried about privacy a whole lot more than I am.
I think Metta comes with, you know, if you were having an affair and had VD, as a result, you may not want that to be widely known. So
that's the one example I always refer to. If I had syphilis, I would probably try to keep it secret, but I don't have syphilis. So
4G usually gives enough coverage if everyone can have that without having to expand to 5G, which uses antennas every 100 meters, like every block you need a cell phone tower. For 5G, everyone needs a new cell phone. One of the big ways it can save a lot of energy is also increasing the price for video streaming, so that the heat that is made by these storage places is amazing. And that it's wonderful, though, that there are fewer airplane and airport expansions, and hopefully fewer road expansions. So I'm looking forward also to having a good ethical code for using private information. I don't mind if people listen to me, but I just don't want them to use it for the wrong purpose. You know, it's important that people know if you have a medical problem, that, you know, they know how to look after you. It's, if you're worried that your insurance is going to go up, maybe that's a good thing, because they have to look after you eventually.
Karen, thank you, Claire. Karen?
Do you mean me?
Yeah.
Yes. Fine. I have got two things to say. Firstly, I just to continue with this conversation about the internet, the important thing to me as a peace activist is to not be stopped and silenced when I want to send an article, publish an article, or comment, because well, I'm not in the mainstream. So I might be silenced. That is what is important to me, that this will not happen. It happens today. But what I really wanted to say is to support Richard Denton, yes, about militarism and the wars. I think that it is impossible to save the world in the long run against climate change, too much, 3 or 4 degrees, and nuclear weapons, unless we do something about militarism, to change our way of thinking, to stop thinking in deterrence, to stop thinking that we have to use violence to stop other people whom we don't like and they don't do what we want them to do, etc. We have to think differently, use the great knowledge that is about conflict resolution. And I'm a supporter of the Australian, by the way, John W. Burton, who showed that deterrence does not work. And there are great similarities between the conflicts at the local and global level, micro and macro levels. I've written actually an article about human security policy, which I could send to Metta if she likes to have it.
We can put it in the comments. Sure, please.
Yeah, a PDF. And then also I want to advertise the fantastic course that World Beyond War is giving at the moment, 6 weeks course, and it's about war and the environment, and it's really great. You get a lot of information, a lot of discussions, too many words to me. I have no time to read everything. So there is so much. And they have a fantastic map or mapping militarism where you can find all sorts of figures on World Beyond War. So I advertise that.
Thank you.
And this is what I wanted to say. Thank you for this discussion and for making my point.
Okay, very good. It's good to have somebody from Scandinavia. Katsaya, you had your hand up. By the way, there's a technology here for raising hands electronically, and I'm not really on top of it, but Katsaya knows what to do, and she's had her hand up.
Privacy is a big thing for us. And the reason why it's a big thing for us is because we are often disproportionately targeted for policing and other sort of oppression type tactics.
Are you speaking of Black people?
Yes, I am.
You said us,
Yes, so yes, Black people. My son has had instances like that. I mean, I think when he was very young, I think he was about 14, he was on the train with a group of his friends and somebody called the police. The train was stopped. They didn't know why. And the SWAT team came in and started searching him and his friends for weapons. He was 14. So somebody apparently had made a complaint. And so what I'm saying is that, yes, for some people, being seen on camera or having their picture taken when they're not doing anything is fine. But for some of us, particularly Black males and Black people in general, it's not that way. Because my son didn't have any weapons. None of his friends had any weapons. They were all headed to the mall. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because they're already seen as a threat and because because they are already a target.
Yeah.
Having surveillance under those circumstances becomes really dangerous and, to be honest, life-threatening.
Yeah. Okay. I take your point. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that we have to be really, really careful about surveillance and how it's being used, because there are built-in mechanisms already that, such as racism, prejudice, bigotry, all of those things that are already present in the system. Mm-hmm. So when you start to introduce these new technologies, it exacerbates those issues. And so even COVID-19 is a perfect example of that. We saw a lot of folks that were in minority groups that were disproportionately that died or became severely ill in certain countries due to their race or ethnicity. And that, again, just helped to exacerbate some of the inequalities. It's not a question of putting the camera on the corner. The question really becomes, how do we address these issues so that society can actually rid itself from it? And then cameras don't become a problem.
Okay, I think, frankly, that the problem of privacy is a problem of untrustworthiness. If we could all trust each other, then we wouldn't have to worry about who knows what. It's only when you know that somebody might use this information in ways that be deleterious to yourself that you have to be careful. That's my take. Anyway, I shouldn't talk. Because you folks should talk.
I have a point in response to the comment that the technology is not the problem, it's our attitude, how we use it. I can't help hearkening back to Marshall McLuhan, whom I thought made it very clear that technology is not neutral. Technology sets the parameters of how we behave and respond. So I think it's a little bit disingenuous to suggest that technology is neutral. It just depends on how we use it, because the two kind of go. The message is the medium, as McLuhan put it.
Oh, that's a whole different conversation, and one I've never had before. Well, okay, now look, let's play with this. Day before yesterday, I sort of almost kept track. I literally put in more hours, and I spent a lot of time at this computer. I put in more hours trying to find passwords to put into things so I could get into the apps that I wanted so I could do the work than I did doing the work. So there's so much protection that we have against the untrustworthiness of other people that we are probably actually ruining the productivity level of our society. Because if the amount of work per hour per person is a measure of productivity, then I'm losing productivity because I'm having to spend way too much time taking care of all these measures where they now send me, they send it to you too, a number to your cell phone, which you have to go get your cell phone and then put this number into your browser in order to get permission to even use your password. So, you know, it's crazy. And all of this is because people can't be trusted. Now, you say that the technology is doing that to me. I don't think so. I think it's because of all of these crooks out there trying to take advantage of my vulnerability and my, you know, they're gonna hack me or rip me off some way or other. And because there's so many of them, we have to protect ourselves, and they're doing this. But the protection is a highly costly thing. I mean, not in money, but in terms of effort and time. And I don't think it's the machine that's doing it. It's that all these crooks in the world that are making it necessary. As the NRA people say, it's not guns that kill people, it's people who kill people. Well, it's both, you know, but the guns don't shoot themselves for the most part, except when we're getting into killer robots nowadays. Guns would kill each other.
This gets back to Rose. I mean, and all of the issues that we're bringing up, it's right. How do we cultivate a culture of peace globally? You know, the pandemic has brought us all to a standstill. How are we dealing with it with moral authority? How are we dealing with racism? How are we building a culture of peace? How are we raising our young people so that they don't become predators online? You know, like, how do we heal the planet? We can look at what's wrong, or we can try to step into doing what's right.
Well, one of the big problems right now is unemployment. 11% of Canadians who would like a job can't find one. It's at 30% in South Africa. But we need to find jobs for these young people. And one of the big things is for them to organize how to solve peace problems on the internet. And to do small farming projects and, you know, organize, apply for grants.
We are really working towards connecting with the people, the young people, against climate change, or stopping the taking control of climate change.
We talk all the time about reaching young people, but that's not so easy. And my impression is that young people, if they're going to do, and that's not to say they're not interested or active, but that they like to do independently on their own, and they're not going to necessarily join what we old folks do. It's really hard to find young people, and what we have to do is just keep recruiting the older ones. As people keep getting into the category of retired, then they become good candidates to recruit into various kinds of movements. And that's my impression here in Canada, but I get in trouble every time I say that because I've hurt my friends' feelings, people who are so intent on recruiting young people. And basically what I'm saying is give up, you can't do it. And they'll do what they want to do and forget it. I don't know. What's it like there? Are you actually having any luck having contact with young people?
Well, I think we really have, we are in the process, really, in a good process. In the climate movement, it's very possible, and there are the interconnection with militarism is fantastic. It's really great, and they don't know, these climate activists often don't know that the military emissions and costs are not included in the budgets. That's one thing. So climate and environmental interested people, they are interested in connecting.
Yeah, the young people like to get paid for what they do. I found that's that's the stage of their life.
The whole ICANN movement is really involved a younger generation. What I've been doing is, like most people, getting a bit of webinaritis with too much FaceTime, but also learning a lot from other people. And at the moment, busy helping the Hiroshima Nagasaki Day Coalition plan for the August 6th 75th anniversary commemoration. Setsuko Thurlow is going to be and the main speaker, and Phyllis Creighton is going to give a history of Canada's involvement in developing the nuclear weapons. Ours is going to be at 7 in the evening. It's virtual, of course. Ottawa is also putting on the Terracotta and the CNANW and others are putting on something at 2 o'clock, and Setsuko is also speaking at that. So
in our website, tosavetheworld.ca, we have an event listing, and people don't know about it as much as they should. Once you get aware of the fact that this is a good place to post information about upcoming events that your group happens to be involved with, wherever you are in the world globally, we have a place where you can put down if you're in Germany or if you're in Poland or if you're in Peru.
75th anniversary commemoration of the atomic bombings.
Oh, yes, yep.
It's Hiroshima Nagasaki Day Coalition. 7 p.m. in the evening.
7 p.m. in Toronto time.
The Eventbrite one is www.eventbrite.com/e/
75-years-Canada-nuclear weapons the UN ban treat, like dashes between each word.
Yeah, and then the number is 1087-603-89252.
Okay.
Is that the one?
That's the event account.
That's the Eventbrite.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And you can also look at the Hiroshima Day Coalition.ca, and there'll be information there.
Thank you. Tell us what goes on in Scandinavia. Do you have special ceremonies, Karin?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, definitely. We have it every year in Gothenburg. It's in Stockholm. Usually, I have a calendar in a website I write. But in this situation, when we can't gather so many people, 50 at the most, and I've been in some kind of quarantine, a bit lazy, I must admit. So I know that is in Gothenburg.
I think there are countries all around the world that they're doing.
They are? Uh-huh.
Yeah, Japan, of course, and
but
I've been trying to tie together a number of different movements that include climate and peace and justice for Aboriginals, etc. There's a particular combination in Quebec called Planète s'invite au Parlement, which has succeeded in joining together unions, co-ops, regional groups right across the province. It's a bit of a model, I think, for organizing. And of course, there's also the youth movement. The Fridays for Future is the best known part of it.
I'd like to hear one more from Australia.
Can I just hold up this brochure, which has been put out by a group called Australia Remade, Creating the Best Vision of Us. It's a group of NGOs that got together and interviewed several hundred Australians about the sort of future that they would like. It's created this vision that it believes is widely held amongst Australians of the kind of future we would like, and it has 9 pillars. It focuses on the a first people's heart, a natural world for now and the future, an economy for the people, a society where all contributions count and every job has dignity, a diversity of people living side by side, a country of flourishing communities, a new dawn for women, a thriving democracy, and a proud contributor to a just world.
I've also been working with a Toronto-based a group called Just Earth that focuses entirely on lobbying politicians to address the climate crisis. And I have to say that with COVID and the response to invitations we've been getting has been overwhelming. I think we had 4 meetings with various Canadian members of Parliament a couple of days ago, and we have 2 or 3 coming up this week.
I've been reading about slaughter bots. When you talked about this military danger, you are understating the problem. There's a guy named Stuart Russell at Berkeley who's been writing papers about slaughter bots, autonomous weapons. And there's a basic problem, how to keep these things from going crazy. It's not just policy, it's design. And the problem is how to convince the regulators that they need to understand the technology. It's one thing to write lots of rules saying, my killer weapon will be nice, and you can pass all these laws. But if your design process doesn't change, things get scary.
Everybody send to me. No, don't send it to me. That's too much work. Post it yourself. It's getting to be real easy. You go to the website tosavetheworld.ca, and now if you look at the particular planks, they each have either an A or a C button beside them. A meaning there's an article there that you might want to read. It's an overview of the particular issue that we're talking about in that. We have 25 planks, and we have an overview for article for each one. So you click on an A if that's what you want to read, or click on a C if you want to read the comments and make a comment. So go there and make your comments and exchange ideas with each other, and then come back next week, and then come back next month if you want to for another town hall. Everyone is called the World in Something Month or something year. So you can sort of looking back historically, 20 years from now, people might want to look at these and sort of get a sense of what was on people's mind at that moment, in that month of 2020. What were people talking about? And they were talking about what we've been talking about. Thank you all for coming. It's been fun.
Thank you, Metta.
Come back next time.
This conversation is one of the weekly series Talk About Saving the World, produced by Peace Magazine and Project Save the World. Please visit our website at tosavetheworld.ca, where you can sign the Platform for Survival, a list of 25 public policy proposals that, if enacted, would greatly reduce the risk of 6 global threats to humankind. Come back next week for another discussion of a serious global issue.